Hello, friends. We'll continue our discussion on the consideration series. Let's do a quick recap of what we've learned so far. We've seen that consideration is price of a promise. If you're watching this video for the first time, I would suggest that you watch the previous videos on consideration to understand what is the meaning of price of a promise. Second thing which we discussed was that consideration should be mutual. It means that it should be provided by both the parties. Okay? If the consideration is not mutual, then there's no valid consideration for the agreement. Okay? Third point that we discussed was that consideration should have some value in the eyes of law. And what does it mean? It means two things. Number A is that consideration should be sufficient, and it is not mandatory that it should be adequate. Adequacy is not a mandatory requirement for consideration. Okay? And second, to see whether consideration has value in the eyes of law, the test that you need to apply is, can the court enforce that consideration? All right? And we had seen examples of bribery where there was an agreement between you and NLSIU, and the agreement was that you will pay 10 lakh rupees to NLSIU and they will give you a seat in their college. Question was whether the consideration provided by you was a valid consideration or an invalid consideration. And to know that, you just have to see these two things. Number one, consideration, is it sufficient or not? Answer is yes, 10 lakh rupees is sufficient. Second, does it have value in the eyes of law? For that, you will have to apply this test. Can the court enforce it? And we had seen that the court will not enforce it, because giving 10 lakh rupees, if the court enforces this consideration, it would mean that the court will instruct you to pay 10 lakh rupees to NLSIU. Okay? Or the court will have to instruct NLSIU to give you a seat in exchange for rupees 10 lakh. The court will never do so, because they know that this is a case of bribery, which is illegal. All right? Next thing that we discussed was that consideration should be real. Consideration should be real and capable of being performed. Okay, and we had seen the moon example. A and B enter into an agreement where A offers to sell his pen to B in exchange for moon. So basically A wants B to get the moon for him. Question, is the consideration to be given by B valid or invalid? It will be invalid, because this is a consideration that is not capable of being performed. B can never get the moon. This is impossible. Okay? The last thing that we had discussed was that consideration must not be illegal, immoral, or opposed to public policy. And we had seen examples of illegal and immoral considerations. Illegal consideration is one example that we had seen was that of bribery. Okay? Paying bribe to someone. There the consideration becomes illegal. Immoral marriage brokering example. If you remember, I had told you that in case two parties A and B enter into an agreement where A promises or offers to give rupees 10 lakh to B, and what is B supposed to do here? B has to broker or arrange the marriage between A's daughter and Virat Kohli. So, what is B doing here? B is arranging the marriage of A's daughter with somebody, and for that, he is taking money. So, asking for money for arranging somebody's marriage is not illegal per se. The law does not say that this is illegal. But the courts have clearly said that arranging somebody's marriage in exchange for money is immoral. And therefore, the consideration here would be immoral. Hence, this is not a valid consideration. Okay, and I had asked you to find out when is consideration opposed to public policy. I hope you would have done your research. Even if you did not do it, we will discuss a couple of examples today. All right. Now, let's say there are two parties, A and B. Okay, so A has committed a crime. A has committed a crime. And B has witnessed the crime. So basically, B has seen A committing the crime. So B decides to file a police complaint. All right. Now, when A realizes that B is going to file a police complaint, A makes an offer to B. What is the offer? If B does not file the police complaint, A will give rupees 1 lakh to B. So in exchange for dropping the police complaint or for not filing the police complaint, A is offering rupees 1 lakh to B. Question: is the consideration being paid by A to B a valid consideration or an invalid consideration? We saw that consideration should not be illegal. It should not be immoral. Now, if somebody decides not to file a police complaint, does it mean that that person is doing something illegal? The answer is no. Although there are a few categories of cases like murder and all, where it is the duty of the witness to report the crime to the police. But keeping those cases aside, let's say it is a case, there are a number of criminal cases where there is no legal duty on the witness to report the crime. You can simply choose to walk away. One example is, and this was there in current affairs also, which is known as Good Samaritan principle. Good Samaritan principle. Okay, and let's apply this principle to the facts at hand that we just discussed. Let's say you are walking on the road and you see a car coming down and the car hits somebody on the road. Okay, so you have two options. Number one, you report this incident to the police, or you choose to walk away. Now, let's say you decide to report this incident to the police. Okay, therefore the car driver, he gets afraid, and so he makes an offer to you that if you don't file this police complaint, I will give you rupees 1 lakh. And then you are also happy that if I go and file a police complaint, there would be a lot of hassle. Police will question me a lot of things. So why not take 1 lakh rupees and go home? Okay. Now, question is, if A does not pay that 1 lakh rupees to you after you did not file the complaint, you demanded 1 lakh rupees from A, but A refused to pay that money to you. The car driver refused to pay that money, and you sue him for breach of agreement, because there was an agreement between the two of you. What was the agreement? That if you don't file the police complaint, the driver will give you 1 lakh rupees. If he doesn't, what happens then? Will you win the case if you sue him? The answer is no. Because even if, before we decide that, first question is, was there a legal duty to report the crime? Let's say the answer is no. No, there was no legal duty on you to report the crime. So if you decided not to file the police complaint, have you done something illegal? The answer is no. You have not done something which is illegal, because the law does not mandate you to report the crime. So this consideration being given by the driver, this is definitely not illegal. Second, is it immoral? It could be. It could be immoral. But more than that, this type of consideration that we are just discussing is opposed to public policy. Why? Because it interferes with administration of justice, and that is what we mean by opposed to public policy. That this is one of the examples. Public policy is a term that is not defined, okay, neither in the Indian Contract Act nor in the Constitution. In the Constitution also you will see this term, most importantly in between articles 19 to article 28, okay, where you will see that your fundamental rights could be restricted on the ground of public policy. So this is a subjective term, but I'm trying to give you an idea of what this term means. So in the current example that we're discussing, if you choose not to report the crime in exchange for the money, it interferes with the administration of justice. And therefore, the consideration being offered by the driver in this case is opposed to public policy. All right. Today we will look at a couple more requirements with respect to consideration. So let's start. The first point is consideration must move or must flow at the desire of the promisor or offerer. Now we know that any agreement starts with an offer. This is something that you know. Offer is the starting point of an agreement. Okay, which means that somebody will have to make an offer first. Now, when somebody makes an offer, does the offerer, that person who is making the offer, does that person want something in return? So if I were to ask you, when someone makes an offer, which is the starting point of any agreement, does he want something in return? The answer is yes. We had seen that when we started our discussion on offer, I told you that offer is nothing but a proposal or a promise that you make to the other party. And why do you make that proposal or promise? Because you want the other side to agree to your proposal, okay, and do something in exchange for your promise. That is why you make an offer. So yes, the offerer wants something in return. Now the question is, what is this something in return called? Something in return, we know that this is known as consideration. The thing that you want in return for your offer or promise is known as consideration. Okay, so looking at this example, one thing is clear, that the starting point, if let's say if I were to create a timeline, okay, let's say this is a timeline. The first thing is an offer, first in the event of time, which means that if you draw a time scale, the first event to occur would be the offer. And only after that, you can see that after there's a time gap. It could be seconds, it could be minutes, it could be hours, it could be months, it could be anything. But one thing is clear, that first offer will come, and only after that consideration will come. Why? Because somebody has to make an offer first. And when that somebody makes an offer, then the other party has to provide something in return. And that something in return is consideration. Okay? So offer comes first and consideration follows the offer. Alright? This is clear so far. And from this we can draw a conclusion, which is that if there is no offer, then there is no scope of consideration. This is a logical conclusion, because somebody will have to make an offer first and consideration will always follow the offer. So if there is no offer, then there's no consideration. Alright? And therefore, from here, we have derived the principle which says that consideration must flow at the desire of the offerer. Okay, because somebody will have to make an offer first and the offerer would want something in return. Therefore, offer first and consideration follows the offer. Alright, and it will flow at the desire of the offerer. Now, if you've not been able to understand this, let me give you one example which will make your life easier. Okay, firstly you write it down. Consideration must be given because the offerer asked for it. Okay, and that is what we mean by at the desire of the offerer. The offeree is giving the consideration only because the offerer has asked for it. If the offerer has not asked for it, then any consideration given by the offeree will not be a valid consideration. Alright? Let's take the example of A and B. A offers to sell his pen to B at rupees 10. What is the consideration to be provided by B here? It is rupees 10. Why is B providing this consideration? Because A has asked for this consideration. Okay. In this example, A has asked for rupees 10, which means that A has demanded the consideration. And only after that, B provides the consideration. Alright? It means that in this example, consideration flows at the desire of A, or at A's desire. A has desired the consideration. A has demanded the consideration from B because A is the offerer. Only when the offerer asked for the consideration that I will sell you my pen, but you will have to give me rupees 10. So the offerer, which is A in this case, asked for the consideration, and the consideration paid by B follows A's offer, which is what we had discussed, that offer will come first, consideration will follow the offer. And consideration will always move at the desire of the promisor, which means that consideration will be given because the offerer asked for it. All right. Let's take the same example, A and B example. What if A does not make an offer to B? What if A has not made any offer to B? What if A has not made any offer to B? But still, B pays rupees 10 to A and asks for the pen. Let's write it down. Still, B pays rupees 10 to A and asks for the pen. Even though A never made an offer to sell his pen to B. Just imagine a situation where you go to a shop. When we discussed the offer series, I told you that whenever you see any goods in a shop, the shopkeeper is not making an offer to you. The shopkeeper is only inviting you to make an offer to the shopkeeper, and if the shopkeeper likes your offer, then he may or may not accept it. Okay. Now let's say you go to a bookshop, you see that a book is lying on the shelf, you give 100 rupees, which is the price of the book, to the shopkeeper, and you ask the shopkeeper to give that book to you. And let's say the shopkeeper never wanted to sell that book to you. Will the shopkeeper be bound? The answer is no. Because in this scenario, you are making an offer to the shopkeeper by paying rupees 100. Alright? And the shopkeeper had only made an invitation to you to make an offer, and that is when you made the offer. So if the shopkeeper does not accept your 100 rupees, then there is no agreement between the two of you. The shopkeeper is not bound to give you the book. Similarly, in this case, this is not an example of invitation to an offer. Just clarifying that. But when you imagine the shopkeeper situation, apply this here. B gives rupees 10 to A. A never wanted to sell the pen to B, but B has given rupees 10 to A and is now asking for the pen, that I have given you rupees 10. Now you give me the pen. All right. Question: is there an agreement between A and B? Is there an agreement between A and B? How will you decide if you are the judge? When do we say that there is an agreement? When we have offer plus acceptance plus consideration. Let's forget offer and acceptance for now. Let's focus on consideration and apply the principle that we just saw. Consideration must be given because the offerer asked for it. In this case, did A ask for rupees 10 ever? The answer is no. B gave rupees 10 to A without A offering the pen. B gave rupees 10 to A without A offering the pen. We will say that this is not a valid consideration because A never asked for rupees 10. Okay. Another example, let's say if I come to your home and start teaching you for CLAT, okay, and after a month I ask you for my fees, that since I taught you for a month, you will have to pay me 50,000 rupees. All right. Question is this kind of consideration valid or invalid? Let's write this down as well. I and you. So I come to your, I teach you for CLAT. I teach you for CLAT without you ever asking me to do so. Without you ever asking me to do so. So I do it voluntarily. Okay. You never asked for CLAT coaching, but I still taught you for CLAT. Okay. Then I demand my fees. And I tell you that there is an agreement between the two of us. Since I taught you for CLAT, now you will have to pay me my fees. Question: will you have to pay? Is this a valid agreement? Apply the principle that we learned. Consideration must be given because the offerer asked for it. Okay. In this case, did you ever ask me to teach you for CLAT? The answer is no. So is the consideration flowing at your desire? The answer is no. Why? Because you never, what is the consideration? What is the consideration that you are asking for? Let's answer that first. What is the consideration? What is the consideration here to be provided to you? You never asked for it, but still this is being provided to you. What is that consideration? It is teaching for CLAT. All right. Is this consideration, teaching for CLAT, which is the consideration in this case, is it flowing because you desired? No, you never desired. You never asked me to teach you. All right. So therefore, this consideration is invalid. Okay, so just simplify this situation. Whenever you have to analyze whether a consideration is valid or not on the basis of this principle, all you need to ask is, who is the offerer? Who is the offeree? And is the consideration being paid by the offeree flowing at the desire of the offerer? Or in other words, is the consideration being paid by the offeree because the offerer asked for it? That is something which you will need to answer. In our coaching example, if there were a valid agreement in place, then you would have been the offerer. I would have been the offeree in case there was a valid agreement. So imagine a scenario where, let's say, you would have asked me to teach you for CLAT, and in return, you promised to pay me something. In that scenario, you are the offerer, I am the offeree. You are the offerer, I am the offeree. And consideration to be given by me would have flown at your desire because you asked me to teach you. Therefore, I started teaching you. So consideration to be given by me would have flown at your desire. All right. And if this case, if this is not the case, if the consideration is not being provided by the offeree, or if the consideration is being provided by the offeree without the offerer ever asking for it, then it is not a valid consideration. Okay, let's write it down. if the consideration is provided by the offeree without the offerer ever asking for it, the consideration is invalid. And you can think of a number of examples. Another simple example is, let's say I purchase a box of chocolates for you. Okay, you never asked me to purchase a box of chocolates for you, but I still do so, and I go to your house and I give you the chocolates, and then I tell you that since I bought these chocolates for you, you give me the money for it. Question, is it a valid consideration? The answer is no, because in this case, the consideration to be given by me, or which is being given by me, that is the box of chocolates, it is not moving at your desire. You never asked for the box of chocolates. All right, this is what you will need to apply whenever you come across questions of this type. See whether the consideration is being provided at the desire of the offerer or not. If the answer is no, then the consideration is invalid. All right. Okay, that will be it for today. Tomorrow we will look at another important area with respect to consideration. Thank you so much.